Welcome to this edition of Simsbury School News. My name is Dominique Avery. This is a special summer edition of the School News. We're taping this at the end of July in the middle of vacation. We'll be talking to a group of students, not all of whom attend Simsbury Public Schools. Why are they here? They all attend Simsbury First Church, and earlier this summer, they took part in a unique program in Kentucky. It was a mission trip, but an atypical one. Most of those trips focus on service to others, but this was a poverty simulation. They learned what it actually felt like to be poor, and I'm told that everyone who participated has said it was a life-changing experience. With me today is Kevin Weichel, the Associate Minister for Youth and Young Adults at First Church, and he's brought with him, I think, 9 students, and who are among the 25 who went to Kentucky. So, Rev Kev, I'm told the kids call you. Can you tell me a little bit, and our audience a little bit about how the idea for this mission came about?
Sure. So for a long time, it's been tradition at First Church, as it is at many churches, to do annual summer mission trips, youth mission trips. And for quite a few years now, we've had a sort of rotation where we do a rural mission trip one summer, followed up by an urban mission trip to really explore and serve those experiencing urban poverty and rural poverty. And this time it was time for an urban trip. And we just felt like what would it be like to try something a little different instead of going and simply serving and having some discussions at night like we always do about how people become in situations where they're stricken with poverty, but also to feel it. We thought, well, what would be a different approach? We came across this organization through our denomination we found called Urban Spirit. And Urban Spirit is a poverty simulation. And we went and we were poor for a week. And when we got there, we had 5 minutes to get rid of anything that it was that we wouldn't be taking with us for the week, and we had to carry with us everywhere we went all of our belongings. It was a simulation, so things would get stolen if we left them sit. Of course, we know that they weren't really stolen. We would get them back at the end of the week, but in those moments, it felt like they were really stolen. We had with us, when we got there, each family group had a scenario, and we had each family a box of food that lasted for a little while, but then we had to kind of find work at a simulated temp agency. We could then later on buy food at a simulated corner store. And we found that eating was hard, balancing eating when some of the simulations, for example, you'll hear later, one of the families had a baby, they had to pay for daycare. One of the families had a health concern, they had to go to the emergency room. All of these real life scenarios caught up to us, and we found really that living in poverty is awful. And what the goal was to grow empathy and understanding, but not just gratefulness for what we have, but a real passion and desire to change. Yeah. To talk about tough issues that we talked about, like minimum wage, like diversity, and how race plays into this, which you'll hear about. I'm really thrilled that these 9 folks are here in the middle of summer. We had a wonderful group go, and these guys raised their hands and said, we'll come here today. And so we spent a little bit of time talking ahead of time, but they each have something specific that they'd like to share. And so if we could, we'll just start with Sophie and kind of head down the line.
Okay, I'm Sophie Levesque, and I'm going to be a senior at Simsbury High School. And during the week, each family had a scenario that they were given. And so the scenarios that we were given were, there was a single dad that was an independent contractor who got their apartment burned down and lost all the tools because they didn't have insurance. And so they had 3 kids, and so that was a situation how they got into poverty.
Was that the group you were in?
No, that is not the group that I was in. Then the family that got the baby, so there was a single teen mom that had a baby during the week, and we actually got a real baby that cried during the night, and So that was a little rough, but the reason why she was in poverty was because the mom actually kicked her out of the apartment that they were living in.
Because she had the baby.
Because she had, actually each family had 3 babies, 3 kids. So, and then there was a single father that got laid off because of some reason, but they had an apartment that they could stay in, and then there was a single dad that was going through divorce. So there's lots of situations and scenarios that can cause someone to be in poverty. And so my family situation was kind of different because we had a single dad that was a convicted drug felon that just got out of jail, and we had to do physical labor for work. Instead, other groups got to do daycare, and they got to go to schools and play with kids and everything. And because we were a convicted drug felon, we couldn't go to see the kids. We had to do physical labor. And so we also had to carry around all of our stuff that week, our suitcases, our pillows, our sleeping bags, and we had to walk 5 miles to get to our work sites. And so then the sleeping situations were kind of rough, but it kind of brought us together because we all slept as much as we slept in what was called the street, and that was where there were no beds. We had to sleep on the hard floor with just our sleeping bag and pillow, and we could buy up if we wanted to, but no one had the money to, so we all kind of just slept together, and we all slept in the same room, and that kind of brought us together. So this shows how people living in poverty kind of have to make a risk and buy one thing in order to have another, and not buy something in order to have another, whether it's buying food and sleeping on the street or having a cell phone and not having a car. So
Also how exhausting it was.
yes,
right?
it's very exhausting.
Hi, my name is Hadley Myers, and I'm going into 8th grade at the Simsbury Middle School. So during the week, we had a lot of work to do. Every day, we had to go to the temp agency in the morning to get our jobs, and then we had to get 2 jobs a day, one in the morning from 9 to 12, and one in the afternoon from 1 to 4. Our jobs included hard labor and sometimes working with children. Our hard labor jobs were painting churches, building and painting book beds, fixing a museum parking lot, like making it look good, trimming all the weeds and everything. And some of the things that we got to do with kids, we helped at a day camp, we worked at a daycare, and someone even got to work at a food bank. Our group, one day when we were walking to our jobs, we met these 2 guys named James and T, who were homeless and looking for work, and they told us about how every day they had to walk around and look for work, but not everyone would expect them for their odd jobs because they didn't trust them since they were homeless and they didn't know what it was like to go through what they were doing. So it was really hard, and every day we had to walk a long way, like 5 to 10 miles each day with all our stuff. So it was pretty hard.
So you learned a lot from there.
Yeah.
You know, we have to move along because we actually are going to run out of time because there's so many of you. So let's keep going. These
Okay.
are fascinating stories.
I'm Abby Fabian, and I'm going to my freshman year at Simsbury High School.
And I'm Lindsay Corral, and I'm also going into my freshman year at Simsbury High School.
So we were given 1 box of food to start the week. We lived on pretty much saltines and peanut butter, 3 meals a day.
So living on saltines and peanut butter left many people hungry, but for some people it was especially hard because they might not like saltines or peanut butter. So that kind of made us realize, people in poverty, they didn't have a choice what they ate. They just, bought whatever was cheapest and easiest to get.
And the food we bought was very minimal. One family could share a jar of peanut butter for 2 to 3 days. There was one day where my family ate 3 crackers for breakfast and 7 crackers the night before. And that makes it really hard to, do your jobs and you're not running on much.
You don't have any energy because you haven't gotten any nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one night where we caught 2 people in our group, and they were eating our jar of peanut butter because they were so hungry. So that kind of made us think about, like, how, like, people, when they're hungry, they do stuff they wouldn't normally do.
My name is Chloe Morgan. I'm going to be a sophomore at Simsbury High School.
My name is Alec Lopsher, and I'm also going to be a sophomore at Simsbury High School.
Every morning we had to go to the temp agency to get our daily work. But on this 4th day, we went there and found out we had no work but a scavenger hunt in the second half of the day that didn't pay us at all. But we thought it would be a good experience to do, so we took our bus maps and sat outside and planned what we were going to do when we had to go on the scavenger hunt. The first thing we noticed is that we did not know what to do, where to even start. But when we first arrived in the city, we were allowed to go on a little walk to sort of like get to know our surroundings. And we saw a parole office on that walk. So we decided to go there first to try to find out, get acquainted, and try to find out where our references were. For the scavenger hunt, we had to find a place that we could live, an ID, reintegration, and legal aid. And so the parole office actually gave us places that we could find all that. So after we got that, we took our bus passes and went to the city. And under our little scavenger hunt thing, it said that if we found a soup kitchen in the city, we were allowed to eat there, which is new because normally we weren't allowed to take food unless it was given to us by Urban Spirit. So we decided to go to the soup kitchen.
When we got to the soup kitchen, we had to store our stuff or our luggage in cubbies next to where we ate. So when we went up there, this was really our first big meal to fill us up. We had pasta, mashed potatoes, salad, soup, bread, and we had a donut, which was our first kind of sweet thing in a really long time. It was a little different for us because with part of our church, we do a lot of soup kitchens. We go help the homeless, but it was really humbling to me because I realized that it's a little different being on the other side of it. We were receiving food, and I was realizing how grateful we are to actually get that food because it's our first warm home cooked meal. And I know personally I was a little nervous about putting our luggage off the side because I know Urban Spirit, you lose it, you get it back at the end of the week. Here, it's real life. You lose it, you might not ever get it back. So I kept checking the bags to make sure, they're still there. I mean, they're 10 feet away, but, you never know what can happen. And I also realized that I've never been more grateful for food in my life, because it was so filling. But we also know that being grateful doesn't change poverty. We know that only actions will.
The way the simulation was set up.
Can you say your name?
Oh, sorry. My name's Renee Mannion. I'm going into my senior year. So the way the simulation was set up, the staff members were instructed to be blunt and short with us, to make us feel belittled and unimportant. That was to play off of how people living in poverty feel on a daily basis because the community doesn't treat them very well and they don't get the services that they need. So by living in Simsbury, sometimes you could say that we essentially live in a bubble. We're kind of closed off from the harsh realities of the rest of the world.
True. Very true.
So by going on this trip was really eye-opening because we got to deal with the struggles that someone living in poverty would go through. We walked 10 miles a day with 50 pounds of stuff on our backs. We had to deal with food insecurity when we didn't know where or when our next meal would be. And we got these things called reality checks when we went to pick up our paychecks the next morning. And they were these cards that would tell us that something happened and all of our finances were gone. So my team in particular, we got mugged for all the money that we had. So that was a rough morning. And you also have to make the tough decision. The corner store has a pawn shop attached to it, so we considered
pawning some of our items that we hold near and dear to us, so that was a tough one. We were counting down the days until we could go home to a wholesome meal in our beds. But the thing is, people living in poverty don't have an end in sight. They just have to keep going. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that generosity alone isn't enough. We need to find a way to come together and create justice. So I think everyone needs to call their government officials and really push for some change.
Hi, my name's Bella Hatton, and I'm going to be a junior at Simsbury High School.
And I'm Catherine Schmitz, and I'm going to my sophomore year.
So you're all of you here are from Simsbury High School, but not everybody on the trip was, right? Oh, you're not at Simsbury High School.
I'm going to Suffolk Academy.
Oh, okay.
So when we were in Kentucky, we wrote what's called a manifesto for our group at the end of the trip. And a manifesto is something, it is a statement that is openly shared in order to make a person or group's beliefs and their goals known to everyone else.
We wrote it together, and everyone kind of came up with their one sentence or two that they wanted to include in it, and we wrote it because we wanted to use our experiences to make people aware of what's going on outside of Simsbury, outside of Connecticut, and just everywhere around us, because we're not as aware as we are more aware than we were before.
So our manifesto is, as an open-minded community that believes in change, it is our responsibility to advocate for the end of racism and poverty. We will lead the transformation from generosity to justice as a new generation where love overpowers indifference.
We must join together to prevent the misguided idea that generosity alone is enough. In order to fill the space that it leaves, we will promote justice. Through the power of faith and support of the church, we open our hearts to create peace and embrace change.
With our actions, we hope to ignite a positive reaction by teaching empathy where there is apathy, showing love where there is hate, and giving respect where there is shame. We are breaking down the societal barriers.
During our days of labor and receiving our wages, we gained a new perspective and learned that we must show justice to all people, no matter who they are.
We recognize that everyone has their own story, and we will use this knowledge to destroy ongoing stereotypes. It is our responsibility to love in order to restore hope for all those who have been persecuted.
When we reflect on our own biases and prejudices that we have previously put in the backs of our minds, we can make a change. We promise to never forget our experiences and the inequalities revealed to us.
We ask all of you to come together to build an all-inclusive community in which everyone has enough.
And one thing that was a big thing at the end of the week that we started talking about was generosity to justice. And generosity it's giving because it makes you feel good, and it's more of a part-time fix. And justice is doing something because it's the right thing to do. And we talked about how generosity is more of a Band-Aid fix, stuff like going to a soup kitchen, donating clothes, whereas justice is more of a broader fix in helping it over a longer period of time, like educating other people of the issues that they might not be aware of, sending letters to elected officials, and something that we really talked about was helping to fight to increase minimum wage to a living wage. That was a big thing that we talked about, how minimum wage isn't really being able to live on it. We tried to live on it during that week, and we realized that we couldn't, and we often went into a lot of debt, understanding what people really go through. And the last thing I want to point out is just being generous isn't going to change poverty. We must think bigger and sort of change the bigger things, not just the smaller issues.
And so while we were in Louisville, Kentucky, we stayed in a really poverty-stricken part. There was mostly African-American people, and we really think that this wasn't a coincidence, because for generations on end, people of color have been judged and discriminated against, and they have lacks of opportunity, and this is mainly because of the system. And we're hoping to change the system, because we learned that your race can play a huge role in jobs that you get and how you live and your happiness, because people really judge you based on this color of your skin. And we are hoping that based on our experience, we can help make people aware of what's going on so that more and more people can help to make a change.
Now, I have a question for you. This was a fascinating experience for you. You live in a very privileged community. Number one, has this changed any of your outlooks about what you think you might do with your future? Who would like to tackle that?
I don't think it's changed something that I want to do, I guess, like far out, but closer. I think we've talked about how we have a PF youth group that meets on Sunday nights, and we've talked about how our manifesto, we can base some of the things that we did before, such as going to the soup kitchens, and maybe we can do more justice and try to educate more people about the issues and just make people more aware, because that can make a huge difference in itself, not just fixing the smaller issues, I think, and just educating people, I think, is something.
So that was my second question. My second question was, now you've had this experience, you've become more sensitive to the issues, you understand all the terrible things that that people in poverty feel and how hard it is for them to live. Now that you've come back to this very comfortable community, a bubble, are you intending, or do you think you're going to be brave enough when you hear somebody making a remark or making a generalization? Are you going to say something? Are you going to have the courage to speak up? Sophie, do you want to? Somebody want to take that?
I actually have a story. We were in the car, and my father he relocates homeless veterans, and my mom made a kind of comment about how most people, she said that people in poverty kind of, they're usually there because of drugs and alcohol, and I told her, no, on the mission trip that I went on, some of us, some of the families were pregnant, divorced, there's fires, people get laid off. There are many reasons as to why people get poverty. There's not just like drugs and alcohol. Like, it's not okay to stereotype people just because that's what most people know about. It's not the only reason that there is poverty in the world.
So it's interesting you did that with your mother, but the more difficult job, I'm predicting, is when you're with your friends and when you're at lunch and somebody makes a remark. It's the time to educate is at that moment, is to bring it up and say something, but it's very hard to do. Right? Kevin, what do you think?
Thank you for asking that question, because as Catherine mentioned, we're going to keep doing the things we do with our weekly youth group, and we do a lot of great stuff. We do a lot of generosity. All churches are really good at generosity. It's the justice stuff that's hard. But we want to implement this in the things that we do. But you're right. It's easier to do that from the security and the safety of that youth room, where everybody's kind of either been on this trip or on the same page. So that's right. Where the rubber hits the road is at the cafeteria at the school, or you're walking down the street on a half day to Little City with your friends or whatever, and somebody says something. I mean, those really are the moments that make the biggest difference. Hadley mentioned these two men, James and T, and it was very interesting because Hadley and I were in the same group, and when we first saw them on the first day, these two guys are great. One had a weed whacker, the other had like this pruning shears, and what are you guys doing? And we told them, we're doing this kind of homeless simulation. He said, oh, we are homeless, and they were they were so interested in what we were doing, but just to stand there and look at them, to know like this for them was real. For us, this ended at the end of the week. And these guys, they did not fit the stereotype that we often hear, that, they were not lazy. They were out looking for work. we tried really, really hard. We worked our tails off and found that really in the end we got nowhere. So you can understand, we could understand why people sometimes eventually give up. We can also understand why, it just, you work and you work and you work, and it's, we hear stories from time to time of people breaking through the cycle of making their way out of poverty, but those stories are actually pretty rare. We hear about them because they're fascinating when they happen. So I think our mandate as a church is really about working to see that everybody has enough. And that's really what this trip was about. And I am really proud of these guys. I'm proud of the whole group for going. And you can see they learned a lot from it.
They did, and this has been fascinating. I have one more question. We have a little less than a minute left. Do either somebody want to speak to the biggest surprise or what did you miss the most from your comfortable life?
Well, I think the biggest thing that probably most of us missed was a bed. I mean, after sleeping for a week on nothing, just either carpet, grass, or tile, it was nice to actually have a mattress to actually get a good night's sleep on. That was the best sleep I had had my entire week.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to add something? All right, this has been fascinating. We have run out of time. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this story with us, and for all your best intentions in the future. I want to thank everyone here at SCTV behind the scenes for their help in getting the show on the air, including our camera volunteers, Wanda Coleman and Dawn Skagel. And thanks especially to all my guests and Kevin for coming and participating in such an interesting and profoundly life-changing and sharing your experiences with us. And finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any part of the show, you can find it online at simsburytv.org. And don't forget to like Simsbury Community TV on Facebook. It's the best way to keep up with all the new shows that we put out there. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for Simsbury School News when we kick off the new school year.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.